Hello again and welcome to this edition of Nation Building. On our program, we examine the political, social, and moral issues in the leadership of the Bahamas. And on our program today, we have a very interesting, dynamic, and informative guest, and I'll introduce him right after this break.
I've been a customer for the past 2 years, and I will say the quality of the service is very good. During my trip to Andros, I was connected the entire trip. So that was really good. I was able to contact my family members and let them know how the trip was going. We touched land, we're here. So it was very good. And I really appreciate that. And also during times like when we had the storm, it was really good to have that service to reach out to our loved ones to make sure everyone is okay. And I really appreciate Alive for that. And even when there's a little technical difficulty, they always send out a little text message to let us know exactly what's going on. I'm happy to be alive, and I believe in best.
Hello, I'm Wendell Jones, and every time I sit down and I watch JCN television, I drink the Jamaica Bahama fruit juice. It's so pleasing to the palate.
I've been cooking Bahamian dishes for generations. I now use Jamaica Bahamas product. The rice is very fluffy, very tasty, and good eating. Jamaica Bahama product is simply the best.
As an insurance agent, my life is go, go, go. But whenever I need a refreshing break, it's Jamaica Bahamas Island Mixed Fruit Drink. Good.
Hi, I'm Debbie Bartlett from GEMS 105.9 FM. The effect that Island Junkanoo Juice Medley has on me is exhilarating.
Hello.
Did you get it?
Yes, baby. I got it.
Don't come home without it.
These arms of mine, they are yearning for wanting you.
Where is it?
Strongback is distributed by Jamaica Bahamas Import and is available at your favorite food or convenience store nationwide. For more information, call 341-4091 in Nassau and 351-8282 in Freeport.
Welcome back to Nation Building. I'm your host, Winston Pinnock, and today we're going to have a very interesting but informative discussion with someone who has the experience and knowledge to be able to talk to you about any number of issues affecting our country. And I'm speaking, of course, no other than Mr. ZhivargoLaing. Sir, welcome back to Nation Building.
It's good to be here.
Wonderful. You've been here so much now, you need to be a staple here. Mr. Laing, of course, is not just now a former cabinet minister, having served in the Ministry of Finance as he did under the last Ingram administration, but Minister of State for Finance, several other ministries that he has served in previous administrations, but also he is now doing ZLive, a very interesting, dynamic show that is on the talks of most people who listen to talk show and these days. And he is, of course, on another network on Guardian Radio. And your show on ZLive is between 2 and 4.
2 and 4, yeah.
2 and 4. And I believe that as we get ready to start our conversation here, you would have heard and is hearing significantly from the people in our country on any number of issues on a daily basis as you talk to our people. And so you understand the challenges, the concerns, and the issues that they're facing. And I believe you would have seen both sides of the spectrum now, because you would have also served as one of our leaders, but you've also I believe in these capacities, people see those of us who have the privilege to speak to leaders, political and other leaders, social and spiritual leaders. People see those of us who have this privilege as their defenders, as people who speak on their behalf to a large extent on any number of issues. And so one of the things that we must do, and we might as well get it out the way, is just talk about, for you to share, what are some of the burning issues, the main burning issues that you hear on a day-to-day basis now on your show?
Well, I mean, from my point of view, and it's good to be here, and hello to your listening audience.
Viewers.
Your viewers, your viewing and listening audience.
Absolutely.
Yes, you know, when you're on radio, you get used to that. I have a listening audience, but I have a viewership too, because we're on Facebook Live as well.
Right, absolutely.
But I would say people are largely concerned in the broad about the extent of the effectiveness of the government that they would have hired about a year ago. I think it was an overwhelming victory, and there was, I imagine, an expectation that things might evolve quicker and much better than they have to date. So there is a broad challenge and concern about the governance of the country. And then if you drill down to some specifics, of course, you know, ban has been an issue in the handling of that matter. There have been issues related to a number of pieces of legislation passed, issues related to, say, the Chief Justices not having been substantially appointed as yet, and just there's a number of particulars.
Absolutely.
But
So,
in the broad, I'd say governance. The economy continues to be an issue for lots of people who are unemployed, particularly in islands like Grand Bahama, where the issue is especially stark. But the economy as a whole continues to be an issue for people.
The sense I get is that Nassau, and I could be wrong, I'm not an economist, I'm just making this observation. Nassau seems to be holding its own in terms of the broad economy. Generally speaking, things aren't worsening, would you say?
Well, the Bahamian economy is actually picked up. It's picked up. It's growing faster than in times past when the growth was at probably negative to 0%. So it is growing around 1.5% now. So there are positive signs. That largely results from tourism is performing better.
U.S. economy is growing as well?
Well, the U.S. economy is doing better. The quality of it is not as we would have seen it in the 90s, and so, but it is better. And so there is a growing segment of the U.S. population that's traveling again, mostly by cruise, but a number are moving by air. And so we are seeing some benefits of that at the Bahamas and those. So tourism is performing better, and I think that is buoying us a little bit. It's not at the growth of the economy is not at the level yet where it is impacting sharply on employment levels and sharply on wage levels. But you know that
time will
take if we continue on the trend and if we in fact pick up the pace going forward. Nassau is always a kind of different picture because it's the hub of economic activity. So it will get primarily the beginnings of any movement upward. It's the rest of the family islands that tend to lag and take a little longer time before you see any real
It's a trickle-down
movement.
effect, pretty much.
Yeah.
Now, you, of course, can speak to this better than anybody I know. When a government is in office, whoever that happens to be at the time when an economy is growing, notwithstanding the growth may not be significant, true or not true, they get the credit for it.
Generally, you're presiding over it, so as a general rule, yeah, you take
And
credit.
so, almost 12 months in, would you say that the Minnis administration has a right to claim that its policies are helping in this growth?
I think that any government presiding over an economy at the time it is growing or not growing will and can't take the benefit or blame for it. To claim that your policies are producing that, that's a different story. Because those of us who study economics, what we are doing is we're looking for the source of the growth. And if the source of the growth is not attached to a policy, then we have to put the source where it is. At this particular point in time, there is no policy initiative that one can, at this point, say is contributing to the growth. Because with the tourism growth, a lot of that is Bahama coming on stream, and that's a shared reality in terms of policy. Mostly, though, it would have been the Progressive Labour Party administration that saw it through to the latter days of its tenure. And then the PFM would have picked it up in this time. So if I were just being strictly objective about it, I would have to say the PLP wants to take credit for Bahama as a entity it essentially brought on stream, and that's now feeding the economy. They would be justified in doing so.
And these things are kind of weird, and we want to nail down a little further in this because, when you listen to the general public talk about successive governments, including administrations that you are a part of and played a significant role, that gets into the blame game for what's not going right, especially probably the first year and a half, 2 years into their term. Talk about state of the Treasury. We had Fred Mitchell on. We had Wayne Monroe recently, but was highly critical of the government. And I saw it as best as I could as host to check him in acknowledging the fact that every government seemingly over the last 20 years has latched onto this notion that they met a bad economy or the Treasury was broke or the previous administration didn't do such a good job. And so it seemed to me that there's some level of maturity needed in saying, okay, here's the reality. There's always a different administration bring different policy, but it can't be that every time a government takes over the economy, the Treasury is broke.
But the reality is we have changed governments now every time
for the last 20 years.
Last 20 years. So each term you could say people weren't satisfied with the governance, and so that's a reality. People weren't satisfied with the governance. But if you want to talk about what actually was the case insofar as the Treasury situation, the fiscal situation, the economy is concerned, the evidence is right there. The numbers are right there. So somebody saying, oh, they left me with a bad economy, well, you could see the numbers. You could see what the numbers were in the year of the election, and you could see what the numbers was in the year after the election. You could see what the numbers were in the years before the election, and you could see what the numbers were in the years after the election. So there's hard, concrete evidence to support and explain what the state of play was in respect of each thing. The problem we have in the Bahamas is that most politicians know that listening and watching souls will not do the research, won't take the time to get that information, so they just rely on some who gave the strongest or best or most articulate argument about things.
And I was going there, so you answered it, because the point is well made, which is that it's those who sell the case best, just like in an election.
But I'll tell you this much. You can always see where the lying is if you pay attention to the speech given by the Minister of Finance in the first budget after the election.
And explain to our viewers how that
I'll tell you what. I'll give you an example of it. When the Progressive Labour Party came to office in 2012, it said it met a bad economy.
And just to be sure, Wayne Monroe on this program last time said that the government, the PLP administration, and he tried to make the point that the current prime minister, who's the leader of your party, the Free National Movement, conceded that the country was in a wheelchair. Now, I took issue with it based on the evidence I had in terms of information. I didn't recall Dr. Minnis saying that, but that's what Wayne Monroe said. But the point I'm making is simply that, you have opposition parties that get in this habit of saying, as Wayne Monroe pointed out, that, oh, even the current leader said that in 2012 we met the economy.
So they argued that the economy was bad prior to election in 2012. When they came to office, they argued that the economy was bad and they didn't know things was as bad as they met it. And then the Minister of Finance in his budget communication projected that the economy would be growing about 1.5%.
The following year, or that same year?
No, in that year.
Okay.
Just go check his communication. It's right there online. You go to government website, check budget, go on budget, then look for budget communications, and then look for budget communications in 2011, 2012. I'm going to see it. Read it for yourself.
2011, 2012, 13.
Well, it would be 2012, 13. That's right, 2012, 13. 2012, 13. Now go read it for yourself. You should read it 2011, 12 too.
And so that will put things in perspective. But I guess the easy route for most of our politicians is simply to say, but now, to not just abash Wayne Monroe's comment and the PLP's position, but the current administration has basically not used that same argument.
Things were very bad, but to be honest with you, when they said things were really bad in the Treasury, things were really bad. To run a $697 million deficit in any 1 year, that's unfathomable.
Mr. Lang, aren't you though being somewhat biased for your party here in this regard?
Not at all. The numbers speak for themselves.
You point to the fact that the numbers speak for themselves, and you said that in 2012, the then administration made this, my words, propaganda that, oh, the economy was in a wheelchair, and I'm making the point that this argument has been made for success.
But you and I are talking about two different things. I didn't speak to the economy. Okay. I was talking about the Treasury situation, right? Because as it relates to the economy, the Minister administration made the same arguments about how bad the economy was. The truth is, if you look at the speech given by the Minister of Finance, you will find that he was projecting growth too of 1.something%.
So doesn't that in effect mean there's hypocrisy on both sides?
You call it what you want to call it. I'm saying that two people do the same thing, but the facts can be seen in their statements. But on the Treasury issue, a $697 million deficit is unfathomable.
Okay. You're watching Nation Building. I'm your host today, Mr. Winston Pinnock, and we're here, of course, with the former Minister of State for Finance, Mr. ZhivargoLaing. We'll be right back after this break.
The concierge service is the best thing ever. Like, it is so fabulous, especially for someone like me where I cannot leave my office, my job, to go do anything in the middle of the day because I'm on the radio. The service was so fabulous. The ladies gave me a call. They set up an appointment. They come with their professional looking attire. They're just so cute. And they come here, and it was a great experience. It took 20 minutes to switch over to the Alive service. It was simple. It was easy. And they just made me feel so welcomed. They explained everything. They hooked me up with my new phone. They gave me my data package. As you can see, hey. And it was fabulous. It was a wonderful service, but what I really liked best about it was not only did they come here and make it easy for me, but they continued to check up on me. The next day, they made sure that everything was working properly with the phone. I didn't have any issues. The following week, they contacted me again, and I've built a relationship with them. They've continued to check up on me. I feel like I'm part of the Alive family. It's amazing.
Who said you can't get great quality products at an affordable price? If you want the best quality food products at the most affordable prices, you must pick up the Jamaica Bahama brand of fine quality products at your favorite food store. Products like Jamaica Bahama Coconut Water, the most healthy and refreshing drink on the market. Jamaica Bahama Fruit Punch, the only fruit punch in the Bahamas made from real fruit. Jamaica Bahama coconut milk, green pigeon peas with coconut milk, condensed milk, kidney beans with coconut milk, corned beef, green pigeon peas, mackerel, and corn. Jamaica Bahama's fine line of products is available at all your favorite food stores and convenience stores nationwide. Telephone 351-8282 in Freeport and 341-4091 in Nassau.
I don't wanna wait. No, I don't wanna wait.
Hello.
Did you get it?
Yes, baby. I got it.
Don't come home without it.
These arms of mine, they are yearning for wanting you.
Where is it?
Strongback is distributed by Jamaica Bahamas Import and is available at your favorite food or convenience store nationwide. For more information, call 341-4091 in Nassau and 351-8282 in Freeport.
Welcome back to Nation Building. I'm your host, Winston Pinnock, and I'm here today with Mr. ZhivargoLaing, former Minister of State for Finance under the Ingram administration. Mr. Laing, the Grand Bahama economy, talking about economy, has certainly been in a wheelchair, I think, for quite a while. Nobody can debate that. There's no dispute about that. And is it not reasonable to say that successive administrations have failed to fix Grand Bahama's problem?
Yep,
Why?
absolutely. Well, I think that for me, it's a combination of things. I think that there wasn't sufficient focus given to it by successive administrations. I think that there wasn't the level of dedication and focus given by the Grand Bahama Port Authority in that regard, and I don't think that the collaboration between the government and the port was there to help the situation much. And then there were a combination of things that damaged that economy that just simply were not easy fixes following upon them. Well, the hurricanes really had an impact on some significant economic centers there, mainly, say, the Princess properties, which would have extracted about $30 million in wage payments out of that economy.
That's an annual figure?
Annual figure, and by multiplier, if you use the 3-time multiplier, that's a $90 million extraction from that economy. It's just huge. That's devastating for an island economy, and there were no easy replacements for that. We were not able, successive administrations, to find a group or groups to come in and make up that slack. We weren't able to find it because I think the Bahamas' approach to investment promotion is far too static, is far too lacking in aggression and assertiveness. I think we don't recognize that we need to have a presence in the world 24/7 seeking out capital, and we haven't done that for decades.
And what specifically should the country's leaders now do in this 24/7 approach to
What you want to do is you want, first of all, to have a sense of possible projects you're pursuing that meet and fit with your economic and development strategy. So whether that is a focus on wellness centers for one island, a focus on entertainment centers for other islands, or a focus on high-end property developments for one set of islands, or agricultural, high-tech agricultural projects for another island. Whatever that listing is, you need to go to people with something concrete to discuss. And then you want to have and generate leads in places where you hear people are seeking to scale up. You hear people are seeking to make an outreach in terms of their investment opportunities. You go and speak with significant global players and talk to them about what they're doing and try to see whether what they're doing can be married with what you need to have done in your own country. And in that process, your name is getting out there. People are hearing, I heard the Bahamas is looking for, I hear the Bahamas is interested in doing. And eventually that inertia will build up to the point where you will get that kind of interest. But I'm told that the government actually has a number of very good projects in the pipeline, and that they just need to get out the pipeline. And so perhaps some of these projects will be flushed out and they will manifest in some positive activities for the Bahamas.
It seems as if, from the sentiment I get, and I don't know what you hear on your show, but it seems as if the public is either too impatient, their expectations were simply too high, or frankly, the government just is not performing. What is it?
Well, I think the challenge we have is sometimes we think everything is one or the other. Sometimes things can be a combination of them. I mean, if you are hungry, if you have no job, if you can't pay your bills, you're not impatient, you're desperate. You need something to happen. So you can call me impatient, but the truth is I'm saying to you, the banks are all calling me. I'm saying to you, my landlord, my tenants are all calling me. My landlord, I'm saying to you, all the bill collectors are calling me, and my kids have needs and I can't meet them. That desperation isn't impatience, it's just desperation. Then there are some people who, the truth is, they're against you. And so they just see an opportunity where you missed to criticize, and so you can get some of that. But there are instances in which the government has not been as focused or assertive as it needed to be, where it has misstepped in some instances. And so you'll have some of that. And then you have, on the other hand, the opposition stoking things and, quite frankly, talking about stuff which, at this particular point in time, they really shouldn't talk about, because they have no standing.
Okay, let's
based on their performance.
Let's pick up on that. In your opinion, one of the items that you see as, and I don't want to put the adjective for you, the opposition stoking an item that they really should not be doing.
An opposition led by Brave Davis should never talk about the indebtedness of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas under anybody's tenure in a short period of time.
Why so?
Because they have no standing, no record on that regard. I mean, that's just a fact of life.
He wasn't prime minister.
It doesn't matter. That's like saying to me, well, ZhivargoLaing was in the Ingram administration, but I got blamed for lots of stuff the Ingram administration did. I'm sorry, you were the deputy prime minister of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. You take responsibility. I tell you what, everything that's positive, like Bahama, he takes responsibility for. How does that work? How do you get to cherry pick that, you know what, Bahama, look at what's happening with the economy now because of Bahama, that was us. But, oh, the debt, that wasn't me. You know, I was only the deputy prime minister. No. Good leaders don't do that.
Okay, so you think it's a bit of hypocrisy there?
Well, it's not hypocrisy. I'm saying that if I'm Brave Davis, to be honest with you.
Not wise?
Yes, that's right. I'm saying some issues, I'll say, listen, man, you know what? We were not very good on that regard, so we expected better from this crew. That's better than trying to express shock that people have this level of indebtedness. When you know the debt, the borrowing that they've done, the vast majority of that borrowing related to things that you left behind. So I wouldn't do that. I would find new things to connect with the society about, insofar as their issues are concerned, that's isolated from things I could be blamed for.
One item that came to my attention, certainly, and I've heard a number of members of the public share with me personally, and it's been in the public domain, is the issue of Oban. And one point that was brought to me no more than on Sunday at a gathering, you know, people share, they tell you what to tell us what to talk about on these programs. Yeah. This is what, so one point that was made to me was, at least from those who I spoke to then, was they had great trouble with the fact that the Minister administration, of course, had moved ahead with this Oban deal for Grand Bahama, $5.5 billion project. And frankly, when it was announced, great fanfare and excitement. And I think all of us who are from Grand Bahama, like yourself and myself and others, were happy to see that something was in the making. Further digging in revealed that this project was something that was previously looked at, and that the PLP had was considering the project. And so when it was announced and all of the back and forth went on, the person actually said to me, you know, I find it interesting that the opposition created the scene in Parliament, and the Prime Minister, current Prime Minister, got up and basically said, look, if y'all don't keep quiet on the matter or whatever, he said, I'll reveal why y'all didn't approve it. So I'm not getting inside all that. I mean, the PM can speak to those issues and reveal in the public whatever he knows when he sees fit. But The point I'm making, and the reason I raised it, is you made a point about this practice of not touching some things. Last point the person made to me yesterday was they observed that silence followed the statement from the PM, as if to say, well, the opposition was aware that they probably should not have touched it.
Well, I mean, the Oban affair transcended three administrations, crossed three administrations. The Ingram administration looked at them not as Oban, but as another grouping, then too.
Same ownership?
Basically,
with
some LNG component to it. And the thought was there, and they were issued a letter approving it in principle, subject to clear evidence of funding. And then the Christie administration did essentially the same thing.
Why did it not go further under the Ingram administration?
Because there was not clear funding. No funding. There was no
proof of funding.
It was clear. It was subject to funding and subject to an EIA, and some parameters were given to the satisfaction of the environmental issues in terms of European standards, American standards, and the like. All of that was incorporated in the letter. I have the letter from the Ingram administration about it. The Christie administration didn't take the same extensive tack, but they did do an approval in principle subject to, I think, clear evidence of funding. And then this new administration went further in the actual signing of a heads of agreement. So the approach that the opposition took that, well, you know, this is weird, we don't really know anything about it, I mean, that's clearly untrue. That's untrue, okay? So I think that if the Prime Minister were hinting at anything, it was hinting at the fact that there was sufficient evidence, inclusive of a video that they had sent out, where some of their members had gone and actually viewed the site where the proposed Oban project was to be.
Was the opposition really questioning the fact that they had no knowledge of it, or were they questioning the fact that there were a number of things, including the EIA studies and other things that they found issues with?
No, my own observation was that initially they played coy with the issue, that they weren't really, you know, yeah, they knew it was floating around here, as if this was not something they had taken seriously. When you give somebody a letter, even if it has something subject to something, you're taking it seriously. When you go and visit the site with all your ministers and those, you're taking it seriously. So you know a lot more about the matter than this just a cursory something that you had looked at.
Okay.
And I think that was a part of the challenge.
Having said that, for those watching and having a keen interest in this because it's public knowledge, why in principle did the Ingram administration, if they didn't provide the go-ahead for the project and they had concerns, why did the Christie administration have to go back to addressing the issue by then giving another, basically another go-ahead to do the same thing that the Ingram administration
Well, I suspect for the same reason, because what happens is sometimes these investors use these approvals or these principal approvals or letters of interest as a means of convincing potential funders that they should come in. And by that time, the letter would have been stale dated. Okay. And so they would have needed a new something. Okay, and that's what
we're going to pick that up when we come back from this break. You're watching Nation Building. I'm your host, Winston Pinnock. We'll be right back after this break.
I've been a customer for the past 2 years, and I will say the quality of the service is very good. During my trip to Andros, I was connected the entire trip. So that was really good. I was able to contact my family members and let them know how the trip was going. We touched land, we're here. So it was very good. And I really appreciate that. And also during times like when we had the storm, it was really good to have that service to reach out to our loved ones to make sure everyone is okay. And I really appreciate Alive for that. And even when there's a little technical difficulty, they always send out a little text message to let us know exactly what's going on. I'm happy to be alive, and I believe in best.
Hello, I'm Wendell Jones, and every time I sit down and I watch JCN television, I drink the Jamaica Bahama fruit juice. It's so pleasing to the palate.
I've been cooking Bahamian dishes for generations. I now use Jamaica Bahamas product. The rice is very fluffy, very tasty, and good eating. Jamaica Bahama product is simply the best.
As an insurance agent, my life is go, go, go. But whenever I need a refreshing break, it's Jamaica Bahamas Island Mixed Fruit Drink. Good.
Hi, I'm Debbie Bartlett from Gems 105.9 FM. The effect that Island Junkanoo Juice medley has on me is exhilarating.
Hello.
Did you get it?
Yes, baby. I got it.
Don't come home without it.
These arms of mine, they are yearning for wanting you.
Where is it?
Strongback is distributed by Jamaica Bahamas Import and is available at your favorite food or convenience store nationwide. For more information, call 341-4091 in Nassau and 351-8282 in Freeport.
Welcome back to Nation Building. I'm your host, Winston Pinnock, and I'm here today with former Minister of State for Finance, Mr. ZhivargoLaing, under the Ingram administration. And of course, I'm plugging here. When I'm traveling around the world, one of the programs that I do tune into to keep abreast with what's going on at home is Z Live. I do enjoy your program.
Thank you.
And you know, the discussion and the feedback, I think, is wholesome and healthy for the most part, I think. And there are other programs, of course. But I just thought I'd plug Z Live. I think it is a wholesome program on radio, and there are lots of them for the country to tune into these days. Picking back up, Mr. Laing, on the Oban situation before we move on, my last question on that would be, I find it curious that the Ingram administration that you are a part of gave an agreement in principle to the company subject to a number of things. The Christie administration went ahead and did the same thing, and you explained possibly for the company could have been looking for funders and needed to have a current situation to work with as far as them presenting to their funders. Now, the question is, you had another administration, a third administration, the Minnis administration. What convinced the Minnis administration, you believe, to have gone further than where the Ingram and Christie administration would have gone with Oban, to the point of announcing a deal for Grand Bahama when the EIA hasn't been done? And I don't know, I guess maybe they had proof of funding, I'm not sure. But why would they, after 3 tries, why would they have been so quick to approve?
I can't answer that question. I really can't.
But can you at least see that viewers would be concerned following the trend of how this worked?
Yeah, I could
well
well
understand.
understand.
And ask the question, and some would say out loud, you know, was our government desperate then to make something happen? Was it a premature situation?
Well, I can see how viewers might think that. I don't have the particulars of what the Minnis administration looked at when they convinced themselves. I did get from inside sources that they were persuaded that the funding was in place. I did get that. I also got it from external places attached to the group that the funding was in place. To this day, I am not satisfied that this funding is in place, but that's me. I'm not privy to the same information they have.
Let me just quickly jump in here. Why would any administration be allowed to, and I'm not accusing the government of having proof of funding, for sure, but why would any administration be able to go this far in approving a project isn't there a Bahamas Investment Authority that is supposed to have a responsibility?
But that's who would have vetted the project and provided the input, etc. And so they were obviously satisfied.
Right. So I'm saying the Bahamian people, it's safe to assume that funding was in place.
Well, I'm saying that those sources said that they were satisfied the funding was in place.
I think the last thing I'd raise on this matter is the Best Commission. It was something recently in one of the dailies. I think it was don't want to misquote him, Bahamas National Trust Executive Director, Eric Carey, that made some statements, and I paraphrase here, that there was great silence and even failure to respond to a letter he had written to the group to raise EIA environmental concerns. And I found that very curious because if a government agency is seeking to get information from a potential investor about a project, I thought that's just automatic, that had to be forthcoming.
BNT is not a government entity. BNT is actually a non-profit private entity. But in any event, I would have
It's
thought...
not partially funded by the government?
It's partially funded, but it's not a government
quasi-government,
Not even quasi. Okay. They'd be,
so it's just...
They would want you to say...
Okay, so they're just getting funded
They actually have, I think they have statutory...
protection.
Statutory protection. They have statutory standing, so they have standing in law. But in any event, that BNT would request information, I would think the government would want to provide it with information. That just makes sense to me, and so should OBAN. But I think the Prime Minister acknowledged that there were missteps. That's polite in respect of how this was handled initially. But in any event, I think they are reeling now from far too many missteps in the beginning of the handling of this.
Let's just drill down a little bit here. And I want to caution, because I hear this weekly from viewers and others involved, especially those involved in leadership. They get concerned about information we put out. My only governance is to ensure that I'm responsible and that I act on behalf of the people, the viewers, in providing information to them in a responsible way. Why would a government, any leader, be caught in so many missteps when there is a system, I believe, in the and we're not talking about a party now that comes to power, we're talking about the governance of the country, the structures of government. There is systems in place where you have any number of professionals that provide guidance and advice to people like yourselves when you were in office in the current administration and the PLP. Why would is it a matter of, like we know is happening in many instances in the US, where you have leaders or a leader that just dismisses the advice of the professionals? Or, because this doesn't seem to make sense to the average person.
I mean, systems are produced for people, and they are managed by people, and people are flawed. Okay, whether you are a prime minister, or you are a judge, or you are ZhivargoLaing, we are all flawed. Sometimes we make judgments that go contrary to good advice. We make judgments that go contrary to protocols and procedures. And then we suffer the consequences of that. And so why this would have happened? Because somebody made a bad judgment. Somebody or somebodies made bad judgments, and that's the reality. And no system can isolate you from bad judgments. What they tend to do is they tend to try to reduce the extent to which bad judgments can be exercised.
Does it bring to the point then, if this is factual, that you with the current system we operate in, that we are exposed as a people to grave errors in terms of what the leaders do?
You have a country run by people, and just like the people who the country's ran for, that they have flaws and they make mistakes and bad judgments all day long, and you get to see that manifested in their finances, in their business dealings, in their private lives, etc., then the people you elect who come from among you are subject to the same flaws. And from time to time, if they are not as careful as they need to be, if they're not as astute as they need to be, if they're not as informed as they need to be, if they're not as competent as they need to be, those flaws will manifest in ways that impact you now. Their mistakes tend to fall on all of us.
Yeah, that's my
and
next
so
question.
that's the reason why we try to select people we expect to make better judgments, but I'm saying I'm not going to be alarmed that bad judgments are made. I sometimes are alarmed that that particular bad judgment is made, but I understand that people, whether you're a prime minister or you are a judge or you are ZhivargoLaing, you can be subject to flaws and bad judgments.
A former candidate from your party who was a recent, a few weeks ago, appeared on our program, raised some eyebrows, certainly from the feedback I got when he made mention of a quote. He actually it was a quote that he mentioned about, you know, the problem with the system of democracy. It is the best form of government for any independent people, but that he quoted that the form of the democracy is built on this premise that we elect people, and usually we select the most popular person at any particular time for whatever reasons. And his point was that quite often the most popular person, to use his direct quote, was sometimes the dumbest. And I take that to mean that they may not be the smartest, you know, so without saying anybody is dumb. And isn't that the fundamental problem we have with systems of government?
I don't think so.
With democratic systems.
No, I don't think so.
You disagree?
I don't think that that's a fundamental flaw of democracy. I think that democracy's fundamental flaw is that the crowd can get it wrong sometimes, but the crowd can also get it right. Yeah, and correct it. It could correct, but it also gets it right. So I just think,
Just a reality of leadership. Yeah. Recently, something that certainly raised eyebrows in the country and did raise my eyebrow was the coming out of a sitting cabinet minister in the person of the Mr. Johnson, who I believe is the Minister of State for Legal Affairs, came out and had some words publicly about the Prime Minister failing to appoint a Chief Justice. I tried to grill the Progressive Liberal Party's representative when they came on last time in the person of Wayne Monroe, because I wanted to get both sides to comment on it. And his view was that big deal, you know, people in cabinet should be allowed to speak to issues that they feel strongly about, and the only thing that would, as far as his understanding of the rules preventing that, is decisions that are cabinet decisions that are made, then you can't comment on them. But outside of that, he feels that there's no problem as a minister coming out disagreeing publicly with your leader. And so I wanted to, as a member of the Free National Movement, I wanted to, and someone who's served at a high level, for you to comment for our viewers to get the other side of this. Was it appropriate for Mr. Johnson to come out and say the things that he said that's in public domain about the Prime Minister's failure to appoint a substantive Chief Justice, pointing to the fact that it can create a scenario where you're holding a critical position hostage, my understanding, in that you are making decisions are being made, positions are being, cases are being brought before the court daily. And so if the point was, if the Prime Minister is putting you in a position to act as Chief Justice and doesn't make it, and doesn't go ahead with the appointment, it can very easily be taken that as another leader of another country in Jamaica, Andrew Holness, was caught in a similar situation where he made comments to the effect that he wanted to see how the Chief Justice was performing before making permanent appointments. So just speak to that, and whether it was proper or not.
Elsewhere Johnson is plenty man, in my assessment. Plenty man for two reasons. His willingness to say what he wanted to say about it showed a certain depth of conviction, and his willingness to apologize for having recognized that he erred in judgment in saying what he said is another something that speaks to his character. He's plenty man. First of all, let me say that. Plenty man. It was not appropriate
Okay.
for him to say what he said in the way that he said it. He is one of the Prime Minister's confidants. So he has many avenues in which to speak to the Prime Minister about his issues, and he could be more forceful than he was in the press in those circles. That a minister has to take that route, that speaks something about the government that we don't want to have to be aired in that way. And you know what I'd ask Mr. Monroe? When him and his client disagree, I want the two of them to come and tell the public. Let the two of them talk and tell us what they disagree about, and tell us why that wouldn't happen. There's a reason why you try to keep within a group a certain degree of unity, a degree of confidentiality. There's a reason for that. So this notion that I don't have that big deal, that shows he lacks an appreciation for why that fundamental tenet exists with respect to how ministers should be, and groups should comport themselves when they are working as a unit.
And to his argument that, look, that was not a cabinet decision.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. That's no different than, I'm saying again, he and his client, he and his partners disagree on a matter. Let them come and tell.
Company.
No,
this is the government.
no, but the principle is still the same, though. There is a principle there. Do you want your community to think that you are at odds with each other, or you want to work it through and work it out so that they see you as strong?
So to be clear, this position or principle, whatever you call it, of collective responsibility, is it just simply a practice? It's not a law, right?
No, it's not a law, but it's a precedent steeped in the governance of nations that hold to the Westminster system. Steeped.
Okay. So the last point before we go...
And see, first of all, Mr. Monroe should also recognize on the day you take your oath, you swear an allegiance, and you swear not to disclose your counsel to the Queen. That means you don't disclose your counsel. Well, even the minister was urging the Prime Minister. What is that? That's counsel.
Okay. But the last question I have for you, sir, today is a poll came out recently, public domain poll, and the summary of it, without getting into all the numbers, because there's quite a bit to look at here, is that there has been a significant decline in the public's confidence in its government, such that some experts are saying never happened in the last 20, 30 years, or whatever, however far back, for a government to, or maybe in the history of our country, for a government only 11 months plus into its term to be getting this level of pushback, that you usually have a honeymoon. And I ask an either or question again, and you may disagree with this approach, but is it that our government is just inadequate and failing so far, and the public has a right to be able to feel, to treat the government this harshly, or to judge them this harshly? Or is it that as a people, our expectations are simply too high?
Well, what I see happening is a combination of things. I see that, first of all, and you know, there's a quote that says, I don't know which philosopher said it. He said, but the point at which we first agree is probably the point at which we first disagreed. Now, let me show you what I mean. Depending on how you read the outcome of the election last year, if you think you got voted in versus a group getting voted out, depending on how you see that, you may govern a certain way. So here's what I think. I think largely the former administration was voted out, and it was less about the attractiveness of the FNM grouping. They benefited from a voting out that in a binary scenario meant they would be voted in. Under those circumstances, recognizing that you were not really endeared, people weren't endeared to you, you really weren't the popular, affectionate choice of people, but that they were really ticked off with a group and got rid of them, you needed to give them some very quick wins so that they can now become endeared to you. This administration has not done that. So people can't point to a single thing that, well, many things that say, wow, look what they did for us. Yet.
Well, people pointed to the fact that they have arrested any number of, they've dealt with the issue of corruption.
Well, if people are pointing to that, then the polls shouldn't reflect, but they reflected. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. Hubert Alexander Ingram knew this when he came to office. He didn't assume that they voted for him because he was such a wonderful, beautiful human being.
You mean in the 92
election, right? He knew that they voted out the PLP, but also they proposed some.
So you're suggesting this isn't the first time we had a scenario?
Almost all administrations get kicked out on the next one. I would debate that till the cows come home. Almost every administration gets voted out, and the next one gets voted in for. That's my observation. I can be wrong, but that's mine. He decided I needed some quick wins. So the freeing of the airwave, everybody could experience that. Because you could just flick on your channel and know I don't have to just get stuff from Z and S. You change up your licensing arrangement, that affects thousands of people. And so you do things that people can experience and you don't have to explain. What has been true of that so far? Even if you lock up corrupt people per se, if that's alleged corrupt people, even if you do that, how does that broadly impact me as a person? Well, it obviously ain't enough. That can only carry you so far. And so I think that some of the low-hanging fruits that they should have picked and could have picked, for instance, if you say you're going to do term limits, well, go bring the law to the country and just do term limits. That's only a law.
Do you suspect that may not happen?
Well, I don't know. I'm just saying, but that'd have been a quick win. You promised it. You say you want an ombudsman, bring the law. That's just an ombudsman. So these things become quick wins.
I hear you. Mr. Laing, I want to thank you so much for
pleasure.
appearing on our program. You always bring a wealth of knowledge and information, and I hope you, the viewing audience, certainly would have been well informed and appreciate our presentation today. On behalf of all of us at Nation Building, it's been our pleasure to bring you this broadcast. Stay tuned for next edition of Nation Building.
Hello.
Did you get it?
Yes, baby. I got it.
Don't come home without it.
These arms of mine, they are yearning for wanting you.
Where is it?
Strongback is distributed by Jamaica Bahamas Import and is available at your favorite food or convenience store nationwide. For more information, call 341-4091 in Nassau and 351-8282 in Freeport.
Who said you can't get great quality products at an affordable price? If you want the best quality food products at the most affordable prices, you must pick up the Jamaica Bahama brand of fine quality products at your favorite food store. Products like Jamaica Bahama Coconut Water, the most healthy and refreshing drink on the market. Jamaica Bahama Fruit Punch, the only fruit punch in the Bahamas made from real fruit. Jamaica Bahama Coconut Milk, green pigeon peas with coconut milk, condensed milk, kidney beans with coconut milk, corned beef, green pigeon peas, mackerel, and corn. Jamaica Bahamas' fine line of products is available at all your favorite food stores and convenience stores nationwide. Telephone 351-8282 in Freeport and 341-4091 in Nassau.
I don't wanna wait. No, I don't wanna wait.
I've been a customer for the past 2 years, and I will say the quality of the service is very good. During my trip to Andros, I was connected the entire trip. So that was really good. I was able to contact my family members and let them know how the trip was going. We touched land, we're here. So it was very good. And I really appreciate that. And also during times like when we had the storm, it was really good to have that service to reach out to our loved ones to make sure everyone is okay. And I really appreciate Alive for that. And even when there's a little technical difficulty, they always send out a little text message to let us know exactly what's going on. I'm happy to be alive, and I believe in best.